welcome everyone. This is Beer Guys Radio. We are back. We are ready for some fun. With our intro music, I feel like we need one of those football entries where they've got the paperboard and you break through it and you all run onto the field, and that it just
Yeah.
feels like it gets you hyped up there. Or like the smoke and stuff, like a wrestler coming in there. We'll work on that. Nate, look for some special effects so we can start doing an actual intro there.
We'll
Hold
do.
up
Get
some
right on it.
hold up some paper in front of you, just like shred through
Yes,
it.
just tear through it. Absolutely. Well,
Yep.
y'all, we're very excited to have a very special guest with us, Marcus Baskerville from Weathered Souls Brewing. Black is Beautiful, the National Black Brewers Association. We've got a lot of great topics. Marcus, how you doing, sir?
Doing well. How's everybody else doing this evening?
Good, man. Doing good. I'm glad to be sat down and have a beer poured and about to have some good conversations. So it's a good time of the day for sure.
Yeah, right? It's been a long
Definitely.
day. But I had to grab me
Absolutely.
something to drink too.
Good. What's in your glass, Marcus?
I am drinking the original Nelson IPA. So McKinley had opened up that brewery back in Alpine, and I had a friend send me a 4-pack.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I've ran through that 4-pack over the course of the last 2 days.
All right. Yeah. That's tough. You get a good beer, you go through them, and then you don't have any more.
Exactly.
It's like, but
Yeah.
at least you got to enjoy them. Awesome, y'all. Well, I tell you what, we are going to get into the podcast here, get things going. If you're watching the live stream, you have any questions or comments for us, feel free to throw those in the chat, and we will do our best to get you some answers to that. So with that said, here we go. Welcome to the Beer Guys Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining us this week. It's hot here. It's so hot, but I've got a cold beer. We've got some great people here to have a great conversation with Marcus Baskerville. Weathered Souls Brewing is here with us. Thank you, Marcus, for joining us. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. And what do you mean hot? You said you're sitting in the 80s.
I can't. You're right, man. I got air conditioner going here. I've got
You guys
the
got
AC
a cool
kicking.
spring right now. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Before we came on, I told Marcus it was 86 here, and he said that would feel like fall. They would need a jacket in Texas right now.
Man, you got people baking cookies over here in their cars.
Just lay it
Yeah.
out, man. Yeah, I saw a couple weeks ago they were saying heat index, like I think it got into the 120s or something.
It did. Yeah, very
And
much so.
I'm like 10 degrees more. You can just, if you like your steak rare, you can just leave it setting outside, and it'll be there for
Yeah,
you.
my dad came for an event we had this past weekend, and we went golfing Friday, and it was like, he was like, "Are we playing 18 holes?" Mind you, this is 11, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, morning,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Are we playing 12 or all 18?" Dad, if you don't have to play all 18, that's fine.
Yeah, find you one of those
but it was-
executive 9-hole courses, right?
Man, because it was just way too hot.
That's you go for the water hazard there, not just your ball, but you too. Just go right in there, have a good time with it.
Just
We
keep
all-
hitting into the water hazard.
Just
I know,
keep
right?
going, keep going. I am Tim Dennis. Brian Hewitt's here with me. Brian, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Like you said, we're talking with Marcus Baskerville, the co-owner of Weathered Souls Brewing Company. We're going to talk about the Black is Beautiful initiative, the National Black Brewers Association, and maybe we'll get into some other interesting things like seasonal creep and riding whales and things like that. So, but we also have Mo Mike Nate. with
Mo
us. I almost
Mike
said
Nate.
it wrong again.
Hello,
So,
boys.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. Marcus over there hopping in those water hazards on the golf course. You all just need to have like a good old fashioned water balloon fight, or maybe even just throw down some drop sheeting and go on a slip and slide.
Well, my kids, actually a couple weeks ago, I bought them a 25-foot slip and slide so Daddy can use it.
yeah.
There you go. Yeah, this is for the kids. Let's get this
Yeah,
for
right?
the kids.
Yeah.
For
One
the
of those.
kids.
You'll love
Yeah.
it, kids. Now get out of the way.
All right.
That's it. That's it. Brian, you mentioned seasonal creep, and that's a trigger for me. You know that. You know that. You know how I am with seasonal creep. And we're just into August now, but, in July, of course, that's when we start seeing the pumpkin beers and the Oktoberfest. It's when Walmart changes out the lawnmowers for Christmas lights. And I've seen a lot of people, look at back to school, meaning the end of summer. Y'all, we've still got almost 2 full months of summer left. So let's not
Yeah.
prematurely end summer. But Marcus, I want to ask you, as it relates to beer or anything else, what do you think of the seasonal creep with these beer releases?
As someone who loves beer, I've always never understood it, right? Oktoberfest showing up in the stores in the end of June, July. You get pumpkin beers the end of July. Um, but from the aspect of a production side, I mean, it's the first to the finish line. So if you're the first to market, the first on shelves, et cetera, and people are seeing these beers, then more than likely they're the first person that they're going to start purchasing when it comes to those particular products. So, I mean, I understand it, but it keeps getting earlier and earlier and earlier. And so you're going to start seeing Oktoberfest in April, the way that the trend is
Yeah.
going, which I'm not really a fan of. Us personally, now, I was proud of myself because I got our Oktoberfest brewed in May, but it's still sitting in tanks, and we don't plan on having our Oktoberfest party until September.
Okay.
Yeah, now our distributor is going to go get said beer, but it won't be until the end of August or some time frame. So it won't pop up until September. So for me personally, I try to stick to the actual seasons within beer, as that's something personally for me that makes sense.
Right.
But on the other end of it, I mean, again, I do understand some of those breweries that do your seasonal creep, especially some of the larger branded ones that produce, hundreds of barrels. It's one of those products that they have to get out because they're producing hundreds of barrels of other things. So, I mean, it
Yeah.
makes sense.
I've talked to other brewers about it. I've talked to distributors, and it's really a game of, like you said, Marcus, getting on shelf first.
Yep.
As soon as people want it, they're like, look, if you're not one of the first ones on the shelf, you're going to be sitting there at the end of the season, because once Oktoberfest ends, those beers just stop moving.
Exactly.
And with beers like pumpkin beer, I think there's probably, I'm not alone in this, being very having a couple and being completely sick of the style. So whatever you buy first is probably the only pumpkin beer you're going to have, unless you're really a fanatic about pumpkin. I don't even really get it anymore, but for the years that I did get it, it got really old really fast. So you get that first one whenever you happen to decide to get it, and
I,
that's probably all you're getting.
I hate pumpkin. I am not a fan of pumpkin. I have
There you
never
go.
been a
All
fan
right.
of pumpkin. One of the things, like I said, when we open up Weather Souls, is you will never see a pumpkin beer come out of this location. It's been 7 years, and I refuse to do one. Me personally, like even growing up as a kid, I remember I had a friend or a neighbor that lived next door, and for his birthday, he had pumpkin pie instead of birthday cake
Oh.
because his birthday was on Halloween. And yeah, I took one bite of that pie, threw up over the entire table, ruined that
Oh,
kid's
Wow.
birthday,
All right.
and I have had nothing to do with pumpkin
Yeah.
ever since. So even like when it comes to pumpkin beers, I can say I've probably had maybe 3 ounces of pumpkin beer in my entire life. I can't do it.
Now I love pumpkin pie and all the stuff that comes along, but it ends up going too far. I saw Trader Joe's. This has been a few years ago now, but they had pumpkin spice salad. It was a bag salad that had pumpkin seeds in it, and they said pumpkin spice seasoned croutons and stuff. So I'm like, y'all, look, when we're going after salad and all this stuff, I don't even like the lattes. I know that's one that's popular when they come around, the pumpkin spice latte. I like the pie.
Yeah.
I'm all pumpkin spice, pumpkin pie. I'm good with. I think Marcus, we actually were looking it up. I think 10 years this year, Brian, isn't it, that we did the infamous pumpkin bottle share? So
Ugh.
Yeah.
yeah. So we got together,
Ugh.
Marcus, and we probably had 12 or 15 different pumpkin beers, and at the time enjoyed them. But I really think that was the turning point for us. I don't think Brian or I or other friend that was there. I think I get a little queasy anytime I hear pumpkin beer now, just
I was
because
about to say that would have made me sick.
of the yeah.
Yeah.
Marcus, you want to come to our pumpkin bottle share? No, I do
Nope.
not.
Not
No,
at all.
not at all. Not gonna
That
happen.
did after that, yeah. At the time, liked him, and I guess too much of a good thing, just like I guess some people have with tequila. Though
Yeah.
I don't think I ever got sick on it. It's just after that, I'm like, nope, that's enough. I've
Yeah.
had 100% of my lifetime in supply of pumpkin beer at this point in time, so it's never been appealing since. So I don't
Yeah.
even hate them, and I like pumpkin pies at the right time of the year, but pumpkin beers. I go years. It's been years since I get into any of them. There's
So
nothing there for me.
yeah, I mean, dealing with like especially generational wise, the black household typically doesn't navigate towards pumpkin. So even transpiring towards our beers, I don't do pumpkin beer. We do a pecan pie brown ale
Okay.
to substitute the pumpkin beer because typically within a black household you're gonna get pecan pie, even raisin pie, or you get your sweet potato pie. But it's very little that you see pumpkin.
Okay.
So being said that, we released a beer called Claude's Pie Obsession. So have you guys ever seen the movie Life? When Claude, went past the line and then he immediately went to the window, stole the hot pie. And so we have like a whole label designed upon that and do a pecan pie
Okay.
brown ale. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, y'all, I have a self-imposed embargo on fest beers, Oktoberfests, or fest beers, Marzens, and pumpkin beers until September 1st. It's just my little way of fighting seasonal creep because I just feel like once back to school starts and once the pumpkin beers come out in July, it's like a speed run to the first of the year. Christmas, they're going to be advertising Christmas stuff soon. It's like, hey, you know what? There's a lot of cool stuff that happens between July 1st and the end of the year. Let's enjoy the 4th of July and then go on. We've got Labor Day. Let's chill, chill there, have a good time. Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas. There's a lot between 4th of July and Christmas that we can enjoy, and we should enjoy. We should enjoy those times, but I'll make it through this, y'all. I'm strong.
I agree. Here's something that's kind of been on my radar more recently with regard to seasonal creep. What do you guys think about the whole Christmas in July thing? And I'm specifically thinking about Great Lakes Brewing Company. They bring out their Christmas beer for like a weekend or maybe like an event in July, and then it goes away again. What do you think about that? Because that's kind of a seasonal creep, but kind of not the same.
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of good marketing for us. I mean, we do stouts all year long. I mean, so we do winter beers all year, technically. But like for instance, our pecan pie beer doesn't come out until November, which is seasonal for Thanksgiving and etc.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm not really a big fan of the early Christmas. Christmas doesn't start in my household until after Thanksgiving, and it only runs into New Year, and that's it. No more Christmas.
See, that's exactly, man. Exactly. That's I'm with you there, Marcus. I'm with you. I'm okay, Brian, to your question. I'm okay with a slight homage to Christmas in July. I don't think that's quite seasonal creep. It's like, hey y'all, let's do this. Let's have some Christmas beers. Let's enjoy this. My mom and her two sisters were absolute insane. I mean, they were crazy. And one year they did a full-blown Christmas in July, like putting up trees, doing the dinner, giving presents. We did fully Christmas in July. It was ridiculous and it was fun. So, it's like if you've got some crazy people in your family to do stuff like that, I'm okay with that. A quick, hey, bang, here's a little Christmas beer. Enjoy it. Let's get back to here is your regularly scheduled programming. So, yeah.
I would definitely, if I were in the area, I would definitely go get some of that Christmas beer. I'm down with it.
Of course.
But, everything else, knock it off with that stuff. But go right ahead, Tim.
Yeah, and the people that may say that's seasonal creep, all I got to say to that is that's different, y'all. That's different. So we'll allow this one. But, y'all, we want to talk about our beers of the week, and we want to thank our friends at the Nest for sponsoring this segment. They just had a big blowout. It was Chicken Wing Day this past weekend, Brian. Half-priced wings, which with the price of wings now, that is much needed. But they also have all through the week, they have some specials starting at like $10, man. So if you want to go get some good barbecue and a beer, they're looking out for your pocketbooks too. Or you can splurge, man. Get you a rack or two of ribs. They're not going to mind. They'll hook you up there and have a good time. Huge tap list, wine, cocktails, even nitro coffee. The Nest, Kennesaw, Georgia. Go check them out. So for our beers this week, I think for the first time in a while, we all three have the same beer, I believe. So this one was chatted about on the internet some earlier because of the name of the beer. It is from Parish Brewing, collaboration with Other Half, and this is called Okra. And there is no okra in this beer. It is an IPA, and let me see. I made a note on the hops. This has Nelson Sauvin, Motueka, and Nectaron hops. And y'all, I'm drinking this now. I started with this one. Fantastic body on it. Amazing head retention. It's got a nice creamy head on it. Banging aroma. You know, I'm getting some pineapple in there. I'm getting a little bit of mango, which I think is common. I think that's something in the Nectaron. Marcus, is that right? With Nectaron hops, they throw some mango there.
It's a little mango. Sometimes you can get kind of a little, yeah, a little stone fruit type of character, type of
Okay.
vibe to it. Kind of some peach. Yeah, so any of that
Gotcha.
stone fruit vibe.
All those play well together, so I'm
Yeah, we
enjoying
just
it
added
there.
some nectar onto a hazy today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Good stuff. And then, of course, we had to get some Weathered Souls beers here. Brian, you have a vintage Black is Beautiful, I think, 2021 release from Monday Night Brewing, correct?
That's
And
correct.
so
Yes.
get into that. And Weathered Souls, Marcus, as I mentioned, we found your Long Live the King here in Atlanta, so we picked up
Nice.
some of those. That is an Imperial Porter with hazelnuts and coffee. So we're looking forward to checking that out. We've also got on deck Creature Comforts Lupulus. That's a double IPA from Hoof Hearted. And I'm always careful about pronunciation on that. Hoof Hearted has Conky Dong 4-Up Evolution Triple IPA. And yeah, so we've got a lot on deck here between us to enjoy. Looking forward to diving right into all of those. So good deal. Marcus, we would love to hear how you got into brewing. What's your origin story here?
Competition. I'm a
Okay.
very competitive individual. So story, my brother started, well, actually all started, so let me backtrack a little bit. My brother and one of my cousins got into beer kind of first. I actually had a cousin that's from the Bay Area that has been brewing for years. He's worked for Heretic, he's worked for 21st Amendment, he's been homebrewing for years. He is one of the original brew army people for the Brewing Network and all that type of stuff. So he's been in the culture for a while. Me, my brother, and another relative got introduced to beer about 15, 16 years ago. Craft beer anyway. And it was like a way for us to kind of build up our camaraderie between family and hang out and go out and that type of stuff. So, we always talk about diversity in beer, but this is a commonality that's been going on for years, right? We would be the only ones in the tap room. And I remember literally going to a beer festival in San Diego, and it was me, my brother, my cousin, and one of my best friends. And mind you, this was like the San Diego Beer Fest, and what was that, 12, 13 years ago? So that's like when San Diego Beer Fest was like one of the largest beer festival type of things. We were the only 4 Black people in the entire festival.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's like literally the only 4 Black people in the entire festival. And so seeing that, it was like one of those things like, oh, we should start kind of diving more into this culture, seeing where it goes. And my sister, I got my brother a Mr. Beer kit for Christmas. Well, beer came out horrible, as most Mr. Beer kits do. And it was like one of those things like, well, I could brew a better beer than you. And so we actually ended up doing our first couple of beers together. Went all grain. The local homebrew store had this gentleman at the time named Zach Frazier who was working there, who's this amazing IPA brewer in California now and multi-awarded and stuff like that. But that's just to kind of show the full circle of what was going on at that time. And so we had started going there, buying grain, different things like that. And first couple beers we did were terrible. We did a Hop Slam clone. We did another type of IPA. I think we did a honey IPA and something else. A couple over palatable, and the rest of them were god awful. So I ended up moving to San Antonio, took a promotion. I used to work for Citibank, writing fraud policies for check fraud investigation. And I ended up moving to San Antonio to do some training and stuff like that. And got in a car accident the first week I was here. So the money that I took from the accident, because I was so close to the job site, is I ended up upgrading my homebrew equipment. So even then, first couple of beers I did was terrible. almost actually stopped brewing. My girlfriend, mother of my children, now basically was like, "You spent all of that money on that equipment. Your ass better keep brewing." All right, well, let me keep at it. So I actually remember the catalyst point was in 2013, and I had the honor of listening to Annie Johnson on the Brewing Network. And it was the conversation that won Annie won the Home Brewer of the Year award in 2013. And so that was a very motivational moment. One, because she was from Sacramento, which I was originally from. But then two, she was the first woman and then first Black person to ever win Home Brewer of the Year. So now it's like, wait, I got somebody that looks like me from the same area as me, reached the pinnacle of beer, right? If she could do this, then I can do this too. Next beer that I produced was a Heretic. Well, we won't say a clone because I had changed up some of the ingredients, but it was loosely based off a Heretic Shallow Grave clone. So for their robust porter, that porter came out amazing, which is actually still our porter that I have on tap at the brewery now. That's been one of our staple core beers, but that was the first beer that I produced that I was completely happy with, ecstatic about, and could actually be proud of. So there, started producing all of the things that I wanted to produce. I got into dark beer heavy then, was already producing stouts, getting into some barrel aged stuff, getting barrels from like Balcones, Garrison Brothers, Ranger Creek, stuff like that, barrel aging beers, and even doing some fun like kettle sours, but was really heavy on like IPAs, pale ales, dialing down blonde ale recipe that I had that I used to call "Give Me That Becky," different little fun stuff like that. And so I grew kind of a following locally, like within the San Antonio like scene. I was doing fun beers that they weren't getting locally from any of the breweries locally at the time, producing styles that a lot of the popular breweries from like California were producing, and so got a following. This bar called Missions Untapped, they're no longer open, but this bar named Missions Untapped let me do a tap takeover, and I had 5 home brews, full 5-gallon kegs on tap, and all 5 of those kegs tapped out within like 4 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that's crazy, right? And so continued on bringing my beers to like local bars, restaurants, everything like that. I did a pretty good job at Citibank. And so at the time, I mean, we had always talked about wanting to have our like seat at the table, wanting to open a brewery, wanting to do something like that. But it was always in the back of my mind. Like it was never at that time like a priority, right? But had started heavily producing beer, and this local brewery let me host a tap takeover as well. And so ended up putting 3 beers on tap. Same thing happens. All 3 of those beers tap out the same night. That place ended up offering me a part-time job. So worked full-time at Citibank, being a fraud manager, working 40 plus hours a week, and then spending about 35 to 38 hours a week at this brewery, working, from 2 o'clock to 8:30 at night, learning kind of the do's and don'ts of brewing, transfers, SOPs, CIPs, all of that fun stuff. So worked there for about a year, but never got to experiment, never got to have fun, never got to do anything that I wanted to do. And in all honesty, like at the time, the beers that this brewery was producing were average, if best. And I wholeheartedly felt like the beers that I was producing in my garage at that time were better than the beers that they were putting on tap. So I grew very unhappy. Ended up quitting, actually. And at that time, I used to hang out with my current business partner. We used to go to places like Mission Untapped and the breweries and stuff like that and hang out. And he was fully invested in the brewery that I was working for at the time. And I turned to him and I was like, man, when are we going to open a brewery? He was like, I've been waiting for you to ask me that. Pulled his money out the next week and we started working on that business plan like 8 days later. So that was 2015. So we opened Weathered Souls in November of 2016. Been a wonderful experience so far, obviously. We have some fun accolades behind us, James Beard nominated this year and all of that good stuff. I guess that's kind of the origin story, how I kind of transitioned into beer and opened up a brewery. It was one of those things like at that point, um, once I started working so much within that kind of professional setting, and realizing how much passion like it brought me, like for me to be able to work almost 80 hours a week and like not be exhausted, was kind of that thing where I realized like maybe let me go into this field and see how this works out. Like a lot of people, especially because we got into beer like right at the height of that like craft beer boom, right?
Right.
And so a lot of people got into beer because they just felt like it was easy access to make some money real quick, either get bought out or go about their business, and it was that type of thing. For me, getting into beer, I knew based off of all of the brewery owners that I knew and different things like that, like man, it's not that much money into it. It's a lot of work. You can make some money, but it's a lot of fucking work. And so for me, it was more so about the passion project and wanting to bring a customer experience, wanting to bring more of the what I feel. I always call beer my art, right? People think that it's just production, production, production. But when you get into like a lot of fun styles, a lot of the different things where there's so much balance to ingredients and different adjuncts and et cetera. Like there is some artistic approaches, some culinary approaches to it that kind of expand just past that production level. And so,
Now,
yeah.
speaking of the culinary approach, you'd mentioned this just a little bit ago, but the James Beard nomination. So,
Yeah.
what did that mean for your brewery, and kind of how did you end up there?
Man, that's crazy. So I'm somebody that, again, I'm highly competitive. And like 2022, I grew like in the space of like despair, not depression, despair, because all of these things had happened in 2020, 2021, and even 2022, where I felt like I was being very unaccomplished, content in the things that were like kind of going on, right? Things were kind of slowing down. And my sister, she teaches mental health performance for the military. And she was like, well, you need to quantify what success is because you've had all of these wonderful things happen and you've done all of these amazing things, but you're over here still, unhappy with progression. Like that doesn't make sense. So she was like, you need to quantify like what success is. What would be the height of success? And this is like, what was this? Summertime of 2022. And I was like, oh, it'd be a James Beard nomination. Like that would be the height because for me, like I know I make good beer, and my consumers tell me I make good beer. My ratings tell me I make good beer. So those like JBF medals and all of that type of stuff, it really means very little to me. Because at the end of the day, like those are just accolades amongst your peers, right? So for me, I've always looked at our brand, our brewery, as being somebody that produces world-class beer, but wants to also create a customer experience, also wants to have a great food program. Our Charlotte location has, a cocktail lounge. So implementing different aspects of the customer experience to make it more than just a brewery. And so for me, the James Beard nomination shit, my now goals, a Michelin star one day. Those are the things that I care about. Reaching, the higher levels of what culinary is, what food and beverage as a whole is, because people always categorize beer as the low end totem pole when it comes to beverage. You always have spirits and wine and all of these things that flourish above it. But again, beer could very much be a culinary experience within itself too. I'm actually flying to Atlanta to do a dinner at Third Wheel this weekend, where one of my beers will be paired with a dish. But getting into those type of fine tuning aspects of what beer can be was very important. And so to see that nomination come was completely crazy because I highly believe about speaking things into the universe. And so I always felt like it was going to come eventually because I'm speaking into the universe, but it came way too soon.
See, that's it. You got to speak it there. So I heard you say the Michelin star. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes for you. And talking about the culinary aspirations and just going for something better than okay there. A lot of times I'm gonna say back in the day. I'm talking like the mid to late '90s. You had your brew pubs, but both the beer and the food were mediocre. No one was really going for excellence there. And we had a local chef here, Terry Koval, who actually won the James Beard for Southeast for the regional chef.
Okay.
And prior to opening his restaurant, the Deer and the Dove, shout out to the Deer and the Dove, fantastic restaurant. Go check it out.
Absolutely.
But he was the chef at Wrecking Bar Brew Pub here in Atlanta, and so comes from that the brew pub background, and then opened his own spot. And you want to do something excellent. You're not just trying to throw a burger down for somebody, to something to go with the beer. So really putting that excellence in there. And I'm excited, Marcus, because this fall Atlanta is getting its first Michelin guide. So we've never had that. So we're coming up. So I've enjoyed the conversations online, the speculation about, hey, who may get a star?
Who might get one? Yeah.
What are we going to see here? So that's going to be fun. And we're told that right now, the inspectors, or what, I don't know, the secret
reviewers,
shoppers, they're out there right now.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think if you're listening to this and you're in Atlanta, right now is a great time to go out and eat at Atlanta's best restaurants, because they know those Michelin folks are out there and they're going to be, minding their P's and Q's. So
they got to be on the top of their game until the guide comes out, because they don't have any idea what day someone's going to show up and be judging them,
Exactly.
And we had a conversation on our local beer forum the other day where one person said, if they don't have great food and a place for my kids to play and beer and this, then I'm just not going. And I said, I'm going for the beer. If you make great beer, I'm going to come see you. But it's nice to have that other stuff, and it's cool that we've got places here like Wrecking Bar. One of my favorites that I shout out here a lot, Good Word Brewing up in Duluth, Georgia. Their food and their beer is both stellar, so it's
I have to go. I have to go to Good Word.
You
on
have
Saturday.
to make it there.
That's my only plan. That's my only plan for Saturday is
Good.
to go by Good Word. Yeah.
There you go, man. Yeah, just hook up with them and get up to a couple of the festivals they do. They do the.
That's we've been in their festival recently.
Cool.
The Lager Fest. We just sent beer up for that.
Did you?
They were just in our festival.
Yeah, maybe
they were just in our fest
that.
this past. Yeah, they were just in our fest this past weekend. I have a really good relationship with Todd and that crew
awesome
there.
guys.
So that is my main goal this weekend, making it to Atlanta outside of the dinner, is to go by Good Word and enjoy that experience.
Now, where's your dinner, Marcus? I know you said it, but I missed it there.
Third Wheel.
Third Wheel. I don't know. I'm not. I don't
It's
know if I know that one. So I
a
have to.
Mediterranean restaurant.
Okay. Cool, man. Awesome. We'll have to keep an eye out for that for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe in the process of hanging out at Good Word, you can work out a collaboration brew, because those guys, Todd is collaborating with people all the time.
He does a lot of good.
Non-stop collaborations.
This has been something we've been talking about now for like 2 years. It'll happen, yeah.
Good stuff,
sure.
man.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Now, you mentioned something which is a big part of our topic today, Marcus. You were talking about going to the beer fest in San Diego and it being like you and your brother were the black guys at the festival, the only ones there. I think in Atlanta, our perception of the involvement of the black community in beer is a little skewed, because I think we're ahead of the curve here in Atlanta with, black culture in the brewing industry. We've got Kentucky Brewing. There's Hip and Hops that's got a couple locations. We have Hip Hop Heads that just released a collab. There's several others in the works there. So we see a lot of people here in actually brewing. And then on the media side too, we have several, like Al Sharpton that we talked about. Mike Jordan writes about beer and he writes about everything else. So I think we have pretty good representation. Not that it couldn't be better, but when I hear about some of these other cities, I think Atlanta's doing pretty good. Now, of course, you're going to have a better overall view of that, Marcus. What are your thoughts there?
Oh, Atlanta is definitely on the upper trend of diversity for beer. I mean, obviously, everywhere could be better when you still look at the percentages, right? So I mean, you named a few breweries, but how many breweries are in Atlanta?
Exactly. You're right. We're talking 1% of the breweries here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So being said that, it's definitely on the upper trend of things, but we're still far way behind. But Atlanta has had a decent black presence in beer for a few years. Like we said, dealing with some of the things that we did prior to me brewing. Like we had a whole hashtag and branding called Brothers in Beer. And that kind of transitioned into a Facebook group, which now has thousands of Black people in it that congregate and talk about beer and all of that fun stuff. But there's a lot of members from that Atlanta area that has been in that group and flourished in that group for years. So there's definitely a huge, well, I won't say huge, but there's definitely a larger presence of Black drinkers and Black beer in Atlanta than a lot of different places, for sure.
Okay, gotcha. And one thing we definitely want to talk about here, getting to that, was just launched in May of 2023. You're on the board of directors. Again, our friend Al Sharpton is part of the board of directors there.
Yeah.
The National Black Brewers Association. Can you tell us kind of the mission of that organization?
Yeah, so National Black Brewers Association, like you said, launched in May. What the goal obviously is to give a table to Black brewers, Black ownership, and to grow their overall Black presence within beer. Like you stated, we're at less than 1% Black ownership. You're at almost 10,000 breweries in the United States, and we're less than 100 Black owned. And even then, you start going into that, you think about minority ownership, things like that. They might not even be majority Black owned. Like my brewery, we're not a majority Black owned brand. So being said that, you look at the very minuscule amount. Obviously, this organization is here to change that, to promote more diversity within the craft beer scene. But provide a means of resources, to provide a means of stewardship, to provide means of education, all of those things that have been lacking in the Black community, to get them on the right path to beer. I mean, you think about it, beer is very much comes from the Black culture. Beer didn't come from Germany. It may have gotten streamlined and processed in Germany, but the overall aspect of fermentation came from Africa. And you deal with the United States specifically, all of the fermentation that we see in the United States came from Africa and from slavery and etc. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, they weren't brewing beer. Their slaves were the ones brewing beer. I mean, for me, even for my family, I found out that my grandma used to brew and distill during Prohibition with her dad.
All right.
And, her great grandmother, who was a slave's last name was Brewer. And we know how the majority of slaves got their last name was based off of the trades that they did prior to becoming slaves. And so seeing those type of aspects, even within my family and things that I didn't know, this is something that is very much generational, but over the course of years, it's been something that's been taken from that community. So it's very much so about education, knowing that this is something that is generationally, historically part of your culture, part of who you are, and growing it from there.
Kind of on that note, Marcus, and talking about getting back into the culture, this is where it comes from. It comes from Africa. Germany, Germany's famous for beer. America's famous for its craft beer scene right now. Is there an interest level as high within the Black community as there is elsewhere? Or is that part of the mission as well, is to getting more interest in craft beer?
Well, that's definitely part of the mission, but then we only got so much time. It stems deeper than that, right?
Okay.
You look at the marketing aspect. We can go back to the 80s and early 90s when the craft beer boom happened, and marketing aspects, right? You got your marketing going towards the Caucasian community, the white males. What's being marketed within the Black communities? You got malt liquor and Hennessy. So you look at the differences of even marketing, what's been accessed within those places. Like, shit, even me growing up in Rancho Cordova, like, we didn't see craft beer there until, the mid 2000s. Like, you have malt liquor, spirits, that type of thing. And so it definitely stems past just the overall interest. It's one of those things that, again, you're historically or generationally built to not appreciate or feel like these things are for you. You're never going to want to gravitate towards those things. And so now the culture of what beer is opening up. People are realizing what such a delicious beverage it was, in those late 2000s. Like, hey, we want to start getting into these things. But then also, a lot of the gripes that you hear from the Black communities, the not feeling accepted walking into the tap rooms, all of those different things are legitimate plights. I mean, they're things that I've experienced myself. Now, as far as opening a brewery, I've had it a lot easier than a lot of my peers in that sense. And so I always say that I'm not a good representation of that, because I literally looked at, my business partner and was like, hey, and he funded the whole thing. So that's not something that typically happens often. But then you
Right.
also go back into like ownership. I mean, speaking of that, going into like ownership of beer, how likely would it have been for me to go into the late 1980s, walk in the bank and say, hey, Mr. Loan Officer, I need $150,000 to open a brewery? He'd have looked at my black ass and laughed me out of the bank. So, it's those things that kind of have transitioned over the course of time that has prevented us from being at a certain level within beer. But now we are at that kind of strategic point, kind of that point of realization that, hey, this is very much something that can be for us. Let's go ahead and try to put ourselves back into it.
Very cool, man. So if we want to learn more about the National Black Brewers Association and support the organization as well as black brewers in general, Marcus, I'll admit that I get a little ignorant because I just go where I want to. I like the people I want to do this and that, so I miss some things. But what active steps can we take to show support there?
I mean, it's definitely supporting black brands, just being welcoming. I mean, I'm always say one of those people, don't support people just because of the color of the skin. Obviously, when it comes to beer, you want to drink good quality beer, right? But those black brands that are making good quality beer, make sure you support them, and that type of thing. Being welcoming in your spaces, like having me on your show right now. Those are things that you guys can do. But then also, just supporting the National Black Brewers Association, that type of thing. You mentioned, the Dennises of the world and the other individuals that are there, those collaborations, those different things that support them, get them out, put them in a space of success. Those are definitely the things that other individuals can do to assist outside of the monetary things, to go ahead and help promote.
Awesome, man. Yeah, we do our best around here locally to support where we can. So that's definitely something we will continue to do there for sure.
Yeah,
but,
life is definitely too short to drink bad beer, so we don't expect
right.
you to support everybody,
Agreed.
but support the ones that are
down.
drinking great beer.
Yeah, we get down a lot. We check out these collabs that folks do, and it's always nice to get down to Atlanta and see those guys and enjoy a beer or two. So that's a good time. But y'all, we want to give a couple quick shout outs to the people that help us make Beer Guys Radio every single week. We appreciate their support. And Terrapin Brewery, we've got a festival coming up with Terrapin. We'd love for y'all to come hang out with us. August 26th at the Battery, live at the Battery Atlanta, and Terrapin Tap Room are taking over the Battery. It's once again, it's going to be a great beer festival presented by Terrapin Beer Company. You can come out for an afternoon. There's over 100 local beers to sample. There's going to be food vendors. There's going to be live music. We'll be there. And Brian, I think that may be the debut of our fancy new festival tent that we just got. So we got us a nice cool tent that we're looking forward to setting up, because we've always had to borrow. Other brewers have had to loan us tents. So we're looking forward to having our own there. General admission tickets include Instagrammable photo opportunities, locally owned business vendors, live music, lots of great beer. There are a limited number of VIP passes available now, which gets you early access to the event, an exclusive VIP area which is where we like to hang out, souvenir tasting glasses, beer tastings, exclusive pouring stations, exclusive buffet, a private photo booth. It's just too much, man. It's just too much going on there.
Sounds like
August
a lot.
26th at the Battery. And, if you get out there before the festival, you go by and check out Terrapin. They've got new beers on all the time. Right now, the latest they've tapped is their Terrapin's One Hopper Series, single hop IPAs. And the one they've going on right now is brewed with Superdelic hops. So go check that out. That is New Zealand hops. It's got mango, sweet berry, and citrus notes. And then on August 19th, they're releasing Triple Buzz Belgian Triple. They brewed that in collaboration with former Braves pitcher and television broadcaster Peter Moyland. So they say it is bright. It's effervescent. It's a Belgian ale with a sharp sting, 9.3% ABV, and sweetness from locally sourced wildflower honey from Grant Boys Honey. And Peter actually has one of the Grant Boys hives at his house. So he uses that. He's involved with that group as well. But Terrapin Beer Company, come check out Live at the Battery with some beer, August 26th. We'll be there. We'll give you a sticker. We'll give you a handshake, a sticker, and
we got a lot of
and
those.
all that stuff. So yeah, we're gonna do it up. Brian, tell me about Truck and Tap.
Truck and Tap. It's a good thing you brought that up because I was going right there.
Good.
So we talk a lot about going to the Truck and Tap website, truckandtap.com, to see what's pouring at each location and what the food truck options are. But what if you really don't know what you're in the mood for? You just can't decide. Or maybe you want to add a little excitement to your outing. Well, that, my friends, is when you try a little something I'm calling Truck and Tap Roulette. You pick a random number between 1 and 20. You head to your nearest Truck and Tap, Woodstock, Alpharetta, or Duluth, and without checking the website. So you have no idea what you're in for. When you get there, you order the beer on the tap number you pick and grab a bite from whichever food truck is on that day. It'll be fun and possibly a combination of flavors you've never experienced before. So drop by Truck and Tap and try it, or don't. Either way, you'll have a great time. But if you do, you got to let me know how it went, what you wound up mixing together, because this could get really interesting.
That doesn't sound safe, so we would ask that if you do that, you proceed with caution.
Yeah,
it's just pure madness we're throwing out here, but
Absolutely.
I'm excited by the possibilities here, Brian. And
I think the
it'll be a good
possibilities
time.
are endless, and every single time it'll be different because the taps are always different and the trucks are always different. So it's just
Madness.
open yourself up to the universe and just let something happen to you. It could be magical.
You might even get an Oktoberfest or a pumpkin beer. Because
No,
it's apparently
hang
that
on.
time of the year.
You can get a mulligan on those. If a
You
pumpkin beer
mulligan
comes
that?
up, you can
Okay,
say, you
fair
know
enough.
what? No. We're gonna re-roll the dice, or pick a new random number from 1 to 20. So
That seems fair. That seems fair. Awesome. Well, once again, thank you to Terrapin and Truck and Tap for sponsoring Beer Guys Radio. All right, y'all, we're going to take a quick break from the live stream, freshen up here, get new beers. We will be back in less than 5 minutes. See you soon. We're back. We are back. We are back. Let's see. We got a few things in the chat here, and we were having some good conversation here. So let's catch up here. Stephen Pete, as always, thanks for joining us. Cheers to Kettle Rock Brewing. And we have the real DJ Jelly with us. DJ Jelly, good to see you, man. It's been a while. It has been a while. We'll have to catch up for a beer soon. On the seasonal creep, there you go. Right, Stephen. Christmas starts after Thanksgiving and your birthday, December 3rd. Good call. Oktoberfest, September 16th. The Fest beer on. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. And yeah, you're right, man. We've got a lot of good local beer here. We've really upped our game about the last 5 or 6 years. I think that applies to a lot of places. So kind of like you said, Marcus, that was a boom there. The 14, 15, 16, 17 is when it was coming up. So I think that was a lot of people have upped their game since then. Was there a defining moment for San Antonio? And I'll add to that I think for us, a turning point for us was Creature Comforts beer release Tropicalia. And it just went to a different level. And I'm not knocking any of the breweries that were around before because I enjoyed their beers quite a lot, but that was different. When Tropicalia came out, I think it's like, oh, okay, this is where we are. Gotcha. Was there anyone like that in San Antonio area?
So like I said, prior to us opening, San Antonio was very traditional in the sense of the styles that they were producing, that type of stuff. I mean, not to toot Weathered Soul's horn, but, we were the first producers of hazy IPAs here. We were the first producers of big body stouts, first producers of big body barrel-aged stouts, at fruited sours. We were the first brewery to have people lining up for releases and all of that fun stuff. So we were actually the brewery that kind of made that transition trend of craft beer kind of being fun within that San Antonio community. And then, I mean, we'll put it like this. There was a former owner of a brewery who had made a tweet. If you like beer that tastes like this, and this, you're not a fan of craft beer. Okay. And then, needless to say, he left, and their brewer a few months later was like, hey, can you come brew a hazy IPA with us? So,
Yeah. That's
the curmudgeons out there.
Exactly.
We had a brewery here that opened, and before they opened, they made a comment something to the effect of, we're finally going to bring some good dark beer to Atlanta. And we already had a few breweries that were pretty well known for their stouts and did some really good stuff. So it wasn't taken well, his comment. And they last about a year and a half, Brian? And Marcus, I'm not here to kick anybody that's gone, but they didn't back up what they said. They came out with that attitude, and they couldn't back that up.
Yeah,
so.
it's a bad starting spot, but you really have to have it dialed in. And I think youthful exuberance. What you don't realize is when your homebrew system is just a little bit different than a production brewery. It doesn't translate magically from one to the other.
It does not.
It's gonna take you minutes.
Yep. Like us opening again, we were always about customer experience, bringing something new to the table for what San Antonio had. So even opening up, we were doing sensory panels, taking customer feedback, doing all of those things well before we even opened to kind of get a sense of what people were looking for, making sure that those hazy IPAs were dialed in, or stouts were dialed in to what our customer base was looking for well before we even opened the brewery.
Yeah. It always shows in the beer, Marcus, those that put that effort into things. There's not a brewery that I know of that is making excellent beer that just wings it, that they're just, all right, let's throw some stuff in the kettle. I did a home brew with a friend, and he brought his gear over to my house, and we brewed. And of course, we've got our scales, we've got timers for our hop additions and all this. And this guy's literally just like, he's just pouring grain in. He's not even measuring it. He's just throwing a handful of hops in. I'm like, what are you doing, man? And he's like, it's close enough. It's close enough. It stressed me out so bad, Marcus. That he was going. You know what? Oddly enough, though, he seriously has like 200 medals or something.
Medals on medals.
I was gonna say, like, once you reach to a certain point, I mean, I do that myself. Even
Is
when like my brewer, he still weighs out all of the grain like to the exact T, and I look at him like, mm-mm. I'm just gonna
Right.
go ahead. All right, this feels like 15 pounds. All right, this feels like 5 pounds, and I've been doing that now for 7 years. But I think when it comes to that type of thing, once you get a feel for it, once you know like the space of what you're looking for, what your grain is gonna do, what your equipment does, like you can get away with some of that type of stuff.
See,
Now
I
I
do
do
that
still
in the
weigh out
kitchen.
hops.
I do that when I'm cooking, man, but I'm still methodical with my beer. So,
Yeah.
I am super uptight about brewing coffee, which is the only brewing I do right
Yeah.
now. I still measure it out every time, and I get predictably good results. I never
Yeah.
have that crap. Well, it doesn't never happen, but it's always a failure on something, like a battery's gone off on a scale or something like that, or something went wonky with the beans or whatever.
Yeah,
But
I used to very much just do random coffee. All right, this seems like how much I need.
Let's go.
No, until I have a friend actually that lives in Jacksonville, Florida, Long Road Coffee, some of the most amazing coffee that I've ever had. And he scolded me for that. Oh, you need to be weighing out your coffee and that type of stuff. And ever since then, I do the same thing. Yeah.
Crazy, man.
It's exactly right. If you want predictably good coffee, the problem for
Mm-hmm.
me, and it might be just because I'm getting older, is that if I would accidentally put too much in, there'd be times where I was flying so high, just like I was
That caffeine.
I was buzzing so hard I couldn't get any work done. I'm like, this
Getting
is
that
too
500
much.
milligrams.
I need to find out where my thresholds is, and I know about down to the gram where it is. If I go 1 or 2 grams more, I'm gonna be buzzing a little too hard. But
Too
if I
much.
stay right
Too
there,
much.
like the combination of flavor and grind size, it's I think it pays to do that. But I also have a lot of respect for like the grandmothers who just cook by feel and all that muscle memory. They just know how to do it. It always comes out right. That's something you learn after many, many, many years of doing a thing. So
Yeah.
I respect
Yeah.
that too. I'm not that person though. I am not a grandmother.
That's right. Not yet. Soon.
Not
Brian,
yet.
soon.
Someday.
Yeah.
Someday maybe I will be.
Brian, why don't you give a little silence there, and then why don't you cue Marcus up for some Black is Beautiful discussion?
All right. I think something we need to talk about now is the Black is Beautiful initiative. And Marcus, how did that get started? It went from I had never heard about it to I heard everybody in the world talking about it and making the beer. So how did that happen?
So Black is Beautiful was definitely something that was very organic. For the Black community, we're very much in civil rights 2.0 with some of the things that were going on. You had George Floyd murder, Breonna Taylor's murder, and countless others. And I was actually on my way to Dallas to go do a collaboration with Turning Point. And I was listening to Breonna Taylor's mom on the Breakfast Club, and she was talking about the course of actions of her finding out how her daughter was murdered. It was one of those conversations that literally brought me to tears because I'm raising 2 young daughters myself. But even then, over the course of my life, I've had friends that have had interactions with the police. I've had interactions with the police, and etc. So I get back that weekend, and I'm talking to Jeffrey Stuffings of Jester King, and we're talking about our common text message theme. At the time, he was just checking on me, seeing how I was doing. We're talking about like Trump relations, family, all of that type of stuff. And it kind of hit me at a point, was like, all right, here we are. I'm not going to any protests because we're in the height of COVID. And so I'm not putting myself out there. At that point, I hadn't even had anybody in my house since February type of thing. And we're in July at the time. And so I felt like disappointed in myself, right? Here we are at this pivotal point in history. And I look at, the spaces that my grandmother was in, the spaces that my father was in, my uncles and etc., and the things that they've done for the community and for themselves and historically. And it was like, oh, you're a disappointment. And then how are your daughters going to look at you, Marcus? Like you're just sitting here in the house, scared to go out. And I was like, well, what can I do? I'm in beer. So let's create a beer, right? And I was going to do a standalone beer, release it, and donate some money locally. I sent Jeff like the mock-up of the label that I was thinking about, which was the Black is Beautiful label before it is what it is now. And Jeff was like, "I understand if you don't want to, but you should turn this into a collaboration." And I was like, "You know what, Jeff? You're right." So over the course of that weekend, for like the next 24 hours, I worked on that initiative front to back. Came to my staff on Monday for our Monday meeting and was like, "This is what I want to do." And we launched a video like an hour after the meeting, talking about it. And I think originally I told my business partner, "Oh, we might have 250, 300 breweries participate," and I'd be ecstatic about that. And I think we ended up hitting that within the first 48 hours or 24 hours or something like that.
Wow.
And so dealing with Black is Beautiful, what it was obviously a call to all of the breweries to participate in a collaboration, donate that stout, and then donate 100% of those proceeds to organizations, charities that support police brutality reform, social justice reform, and the in between. But I think I actually had this conversation earlier. I've had all these people since then contact me that are doing those different type of collaborations and stuff like that. "Oh, well, how can we do to make it bigger, and how can we reach out to more people?" And I always tell people I was just the person that pushed the beer. It was everybody else that did everything. It was all of the consumers, all of the people that were sharing the beers. I mean, the amount of media attention that it had, even the amount of breweries that were participating, sharing, coming out, saying things, and then actually sticking to what they said that they were going to do. And that initiative raising $6+ million, all 50 states joining in, 30 plus countries joining in. It was everybody else that moved that initiative. I mean, me and my sales manager definitely had a ton of work managing all of that for about a year and a half, and it took me completely away from the brewery, took me completely away from my family, and it was like one of those things that I was literally spending 20 hours of my day on. But it was very much so the people, the breweries, all of the individuals that took to heart the initiative that actually drove that to be successful. I was just the person that came up with it.
So with that success and the amount of time you put into it, you just announced volume 2 of it, right? This week or last week?
Yeah, I thought I was done with Black is Beautiful. No, but
No,
obviously,
you're not gonna get out of it.
no. Obviously, with the launch of the National Black Brewers Association in May, you have to have something of sustainability, financial security, and those things to kind of build up the size of this type of trade organization. And so had a conversation with Kevin Johnson, and we felt like obviously Black is Beautiful supporting the National Black Brewers Association was inherently the next step for Black is Beautiful, right? We talked about the long-term goals. We talked about wanting to have a seat at the table and wanted to talk about the disparities. And now this organization is here to change those things. And so dealing with Black is Beautiful, let's utilize the momentum, the background that it's built. And hopefully, those individuals that signed on for the original batch sticks to their promise of wanting to do the long-term goals and then reproduces this beer to support this organization with the goal of raising $1 million in support of the National Black Brewers Association.
So is this next version, is the style the same? Is it?
No, yeah, I mean,
I didn't see the info on that. What do we got?
Yeah.
What do we got coming here?
So obviously the first one was a stout in June, right? And you had all these 1,600 iterations of stouts that came out. So this year, obviously, to set it apart, create a volume 2, make it something completely different. This year is going to be a hazy IPA, and it's with HBC 586, Nectaron, and Citra.
That sounds good.
Or actually,
Brian,
no, it's got not Citra, Strata. Excuse me.
Okay, gotcha. Brian, do you want to go ahead and make the pitch for next year to be a rock beer?
Yes, that's a great idea. You know what? I hadn't even thought about, but some sort of a smoked ale.
I feel about smoked beers almost like I do about pumpkin beer.
Oh no,
smoked pumpkin beer. It's decided, man.
I think you're outvoted.
Yeah.
Another thing that's it's people love it in small doses, but it doesn't have like staying power as like a all year release. But black IPAs, people love black IPAs. I was kind of surprised you didn't go that angle because again, in like the limited releases these days, people eat them up. They just absolutely eat them up. But you like once upon a time, black IPAs, everybody was doing them, and you don't see them very much anymore. So
No, and that was again the first collaboration that we did. Getting into beer was a black IPA with Miraz Brewing Company.
Yeah.
So that is actually a beer that I want to bring back on a different project in support of the original Brothers in Beer theme and kind of the things that Miraz did for us. I had actually just did a post for him. I think maybe 2 weeks ago. I woke up. I do my best thinking on the toilet in the morning. That's when I come up with my
Meditation
ideas.
time.
Yeah,
there,
like
right?
that's when
Yeah.
seriously I tell people this all. When did you come up with that idea? And it's like literally I have my little span of that's my best work. So I was writing the post and I thought about it and I was like, man, like this dude Mike Mraz is literally like at the forefront of individuals that have been supportive for diversity in beer. Like he's one of the originals. This man took us in, produced the black IPA collaboration, named it Brothers in Beer. He was the first person that accepted me in to teach me how to brew. He used to let me volunteer. He gave my best friend a job when I asked him to give him a job. Now he's California's best brewery right now, and all of these little fun little things behind him. And it was like, without the support that he provided early on, I don't think, we would be where we're at now. And so, dealing with that, I want to do something special with that black IPA and do something in line with that project. And plus, dealing with Black is Beautiful, I felt like that would have been a little too predictable. And so, dealing with a hazy, I think that's something that's in everybody's, most people's wheelhouse
Most
as far
people's
as
right.
as far as producing and can go ahead and create a fantastic product or utilize the recipe that we provided and make a good hazy for those that don't typically produce them.
Yeah. That was my thinking when you said that, Brian, about the black IPA is that with an initiative like this, you want mass appeal. You're not going to sell as
true.
many black IPAs as you will a hazy IPA or a stout. So,
Hazy
Exactly.
IPAs
and the
will blow
goal is
out.
that. So,
I think they'll even outsell the stouts just because
yeah,
more people will drink them more of the time. I know that I am
Exactly.
all over
always
them.
looking for a hazy IPA. The one thing before we leave the subject, what did you think about people going all kinds of different directions with the original Black is Beautiful project? Because I've got an Imperial Milk Stout that's 11% over here. This Black is Beautiful, and I don't think that was the original recipe. Are you
Yeah.
cool with that, or?
That's what we wanted. I mean, if
Oh,
you
okay.
look at the original website, we encouraged individuals use this as a basis and have fun, be creative. Who the hell wants 1,600 of the same exact beers?
The
That's not
same
fun.
beer.
That's not
I
fun.
do got to say though, Marcus, everybody that brews a beer, even following the same recipe, there's always some variants.
Some
So
differences. Yeah.
me being a beer nerd, I would love to have 1,600 of what's supposed to be the same beer and see the differences in them. Everybody
Yeah.
else may not be game for that, but I think it would be kind of cool. So,
From a scientific aspect, that would be kind of cool
right.
to see
Yeah.
those kind of variations of their processes. But for the sake of what this was and the consumers, I wanted people to have fun. And then you got breweries like Side Project, Perennial, Finback, Other Half, all of these Jay Wakefield, all of these producers that do fantastic stouts. You don't want them to stick in a bubble. Let them do what they do.
Sure. Bring
That's a
your own
fair point.
do what you do with this, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So Marcus, before we wrap up here, I just want to note I have opened up your beer here, the Long Live the King, and this is excellent. So one thing
I'm
I
glad it held
always
up.
Brian's, if you're watching the live stream, you can't see this on the podcast, but Brian's showing the can right now. But one thing I like in this is that the flavors are noticeable, but it's not cloying. Like a lot of times people bring flavors to a beer, the nuts and such, and it's over the top. This is not.
Yeah, that's one of the big things for us, or me in general, is balance. So
Yeah.
we utilize a ton of ingredients in beers. I think I even have a barrel aged stout that utilizes 7 different ingredients. But if
Okay.
I was to name every single one of those ingredients as you're drinking that beer, you could pull every single one out and differentiate them from the next. And that's the important part when it comes to beer. If I'm spending the money to utilize the most expensive vanilla, the most expensive coconuts, hazelnuts, coffee, all of these different, and then Tanzanian coffee isn't cheap. So, utilizing these ingredients, you don't want to build or produce a cloying beer where you're only going to get one or two of the 4 or 5 ingredients if that's what you're utilizing.
Yeah.
One of the things that I very much pride myself on when it comes to the beers that we produce is if we say that there's an ingredient in that beer, you're going to be able to taste that ingredient.
You're not throwing Folgers in this one, is what you're saying, right?
Not at all.
Yeah.
I'm very much a coffee drinker. To me, I hold to dear heart some of the coffee beers that we produce. I knew we were producing great coffee when some of the top coffee stout producers in the country started asking me what I was doing to process our coffee. I very much treat our coffee like cold brew. It recirculates in a separate tank. It's only for a certain amount of hours. It doesn't go past that point. It has to be recirculated cold. There's numerous things that go into the way that we produce coffee within that beer. And so I'm glad to see that it held up because I'm also one of those people that if you're producing a coffee beer, you should drink it fresh. And that beer was produced, I think, last fall.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
being that those ingredients have held up and balanced out, that's a good attest to my brewer that he's doing a fantastic job getting those ingredients in. Yeah.
I know a lot of coffee beers I've had when they get old, the coffee changes to like a green pepper.
You start getting that green pepper. You start getting and that goes into the way that you produce and use that coffee. So we use coarse ground only. That's going to individuals that use either liquid cold brew that can do that, or people that use whole bean. Typically, whole bean will end up producing those type of flavor points over the course of time. So like I said, trying to produce a coffee the way that it is, pulling those lighter notes aspects without pulling the off flavors and things that go into it are kind of what's important when it comes to our coffee beers. So we take some delicate time with that to make sure that it's correct every time.
Well, it's good. I enjoy it a lot, man. Very, very good stuff. So we all know about Black is Beautiful. That if someone comes to your tap room, though, what beer should they drink? What's the one that's under the radar there?
I always tell people to start with the Helles.
Okay.
Either Helles or Schwarzbier. Schwarzbier is probably my favorite beer on tap. During COVID time, I had Ashley from Beerstack come visit. Her and her husband came down, and she ran me through the whole process of lager. That was something that we're always known for IPAs and everything, stouts and etc. And we had decent lagers, but it was something that I wanted to make better, and so she came down and ran us through the whole lager process, fermentation, the mash, everything. And so we ended up producing that beer together, and it was so well done that's something that we've kept on draft since 2020.
Did they talk you into getting one of those float tanks or whatever? I know
Not
they
doing
have.
that, no. But what's crazy, like Ashley, when it comes to like, oh my God, when it comes to like her production of lagers, like the things that she gets into are things that you wouldn't even think about. Like, I mean, just as short, like she had her whole entire kettle come from Germany, and it's produced out of brick. And the reason why she has this brick kettle is because she didn't like the way that her lagers were convecting inside of a stainless tank versus how they do in brick. And so she's converted, her whole kettle to being brick to be able to mimic what she's seen as far as what she enjoyed, as far as the lager process in Germany or wherever, I forgot where it was. But just those type of intricate processes that go into the quality of her lager is crazy to me.
So is the Schwarzbier you're talking about oak aged castling by any chance? Because that's the one I had when I was there.
Yes, sir.
Is that the same one? That was
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize at the time that it was a collaboration beer. It was just on tap, and it was just an afternoon. It was a quiet afternoon while I happened to be in town. So that's quite nice. The good Schwarzbier, you can't go wrong there. It's it looks dark, but it drinks so easy. Even
easy,
in warm weather. Yeah,
4.5%. Super easy drinking. I got her to throw a little bit of rye into it to kind of offset it from that traditional style just a tad bit, but offer up, a little something different within the overall mouthfeel of the beer. It came out nice. Like I said, it was a collaboration. It ended up turning into basically one of our core beers. It does so well.
Sounds good. I love a Schwartz
Excellent.
beer. I'm all about that. Awesome. Marcus, is there anything else you want folks to know about Weathered Souls or any of your any of the things you have your hands into there?
Yeah, obviously, if you're on the East Coast, check out our Charlotte, North Carolina location. We just revamped our food menu. Chef Jameson was taught under our executive chef and Gregory Collier, 5 times James Beard nominee chef up in Charlotte. Actually, he has the #1 restaurant in North Carolina, Leah Louise. So executing a fantastic menu that we just launched today with the new brisket sandwich, beer can, chicken, chicken wings for those vegans, a nice hummus plate, all of those fun stuff to kind of bring in that culinary experience to pair well with the beer. Outside of that, no, we're just always busy, always working. We have a fun announcement coming for October for that Charlotte market. So stay tuned for that. We have a 3rd tap room opening. I can't wait to share where.
I think now's as good a time as any to share that info, Marcus.
Just let us know now.
Where's that new tap room coming?
I can't share that yet.
See, we try.
Region?
We always try.
Yeah.
Can we get a region
But
though?
It's going to be in Charlotte. It's going to be in Charlotte.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right.
All right.
And I will say, prior to a recent buyout, there was a certain team that used to be the only majority Black-owned sports brand in the country,
Okay. All right.
and we'll be working with them.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. There you go, folks. I'm sure
Yeah.
the detectives will get right on that
Yeah.
to get it off.
Some
figured
clues for you. Figure that one out.
out. Good stuff. And Marcus, where is the best place to keep up with what's happening at Weathered Souls?
Obviously, you're going to see the most attention on our Instagram, so Weathered Souls Brewing on Instagram and Facebook as well. But you can always check for updates on weathersouls.beer.
Awesome. Marcus, thank you so much for joining and chatting with us. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having me. You guys have a great evening.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, y'all, that
Cheers.
wraps it up for this episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show. Make sure to come back and join us next week for more craft beer info. Again, thanks for tuning in. Y'all have a great week, and don't forget to drink local. Cheers. Good stuff. Marcus, thanks,
All right.
man. That was a great conversation. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, you guys, for having me.
Yeah, sure thing. So we'll get the podcast will go out Saturday, and we'll get the links out and that to Alana and such. And we love for you to share it with your followers and
Yeah, definitely.
check it out there. Brian, what were you were about to say something there?
I was just going to say, I noticed that there was definitely a strong comic book theme to the can. I was curious what that was about. We didn't get to it during the recording. of the show.
Yeah. So I'm a huge comic book nerd. Have been since I was a child. Huge Marvel fan. And so with the original Black Panther, we had the honor of being able to produce a Black Panther beer and releasing it with Alamo Drafthouse for the entire state of Texas. And so it was the official Black Panther beer for Alamo Drafthouse when the original Black Panther movie came out.
That's cool, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, and so dealing with that, actually, they rented out one of the theaters for a premiere for us, and ended up proposing to the kid's mom at the premiere, and all of that fun stuff. So that's kind of like a little ode to all of that type of thing.
Very cool.
Very cool. Man. Awesome. Cool. Marcus, when we end this, we invite our Patreon supporters to come for the after party. You're welcome to hang out, but no obligation. We just kind of hang around, drink a beer, and run our mouths. So if you'd like to hang, you are more than welcome. We'd love to have you. Y'all, we are going to end the live broadcast now. Again, if you're a Patreon supporter, we're going to post the link on our Discord server. You're welcome to come hang with us and have a beer. Y'all have a good one, and we'll see you next week.
All right, Jeff.